Good morning, and let me say something that might genuinely shock you. The decade between 65 and 75 is not the peaceful golden chapter that those glossy retirement brochures from Florida or Arizona promised your family. It is a silent, creeping, emotional battlefield. While you are busy planning your golf days, a quiet crisis is brewing right under your roof. And the terrifying part? Most couples have absolutely no idea it's happening until the damage to their life, their bond, and their biological survival is already completely irreversible. When you look at couples who have spent 3 or 4 decades building a life together, you naturally assume they have survived the hardest tests. You assume that if a marriage can withstand the financial struggles of their 20s, the chaotic stress of raising children in their 30s, and the corporate exhausting grind of their 50s, it is built to last forever. But as a clinician who has monitored the structural shifts of aging populations for over 30 years, I am here to tell you that this assumption is not just wrong, it is biologically and socially catastrophic. Right now, across the United States, a quiet tectonic shift is tearing the older demographic apart, and it is happening in a specific window where people are completely unprepared. We are currently witnessing what researchers have termed the gray divorce shockwave. For decades, the overall divorce rate across younger generations has steadily stabilized or even declined. But when you look at the demographic of older Americans, the data tells a radically different story. A landmark study published by the Pew Research Center uncovered a trend that should make every married person over 60 pay close attention. According to their comprehensive demographic analysis, the divorce rate among adults aged 65 and older in the United States has roughly tripled between 1,990 and 2015, tripled in just 25 years. While the rest of society is finding ways to stay together, the older generation, specifically the generation that is currently occupying that critical 65 to 75 window, is splitting apart at an unprecedented velocity. This is a massive demographic anomaly that completely shatters the myth of the peaceful golden retirement years. To understand why this explosion is occurring right now, we have to look directly at the American retirement structure. Think of a long-term marriage like a bridge. For 30 years, that bridge was supported by heavy concrete pillars. Your demanding career, your daily commute, your shared financial goals, and the massive emotional and physical investment of raising children. Every day, your schedule was structurally dictated by external responsibilities. You and your spouse were partners in a complex corporate and domestic enterprise. But then, you hit age 65. The career ends. The gold watch is handed over. Around the same time, the phenomena known as the empty nest occurs. The children pack up their bags, graduate from college, and move across the country to start their own independent lives in distant states. Suddenly, overnight, those structural pillars supporting the bridge are completely removed. The social scaffolding disappears. For the first time in 35 years, two individuals are forced to look directly at each other inside an empty house, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with absolutely no external buffer. Without the distraction of work and children, the silent fractures that were ignored for decades suddenly turn into massive, unbridgeable chasms. This is the moment where the illusion of safety vanishes. Most people believe that the greatest threat to their longevity is a poor diet or a lack of physical movement. They spend thousands of dollars on organic food and gym memberships, but they are completely blind to the fact that the psychological and biological fallout of a late-life marital collapse is lurking right around the corner, waiting to derail their health faster than any disease. Before we dive into the dark physiological mechanics of what a late-life split actually does to your internal organs and your immune system, I need to ask you a very direct question. Leave a comment below telling me your current age, how many years you have been married, and one major change you noticed in your relationship dynamic after retirement. I read every single comment personally, and your raw insights will directly guide the next medical breakdowns I create for this community. Most people view divorce as a strictly emotional and financial crisis. They think of the legal battles, the bitter division of assets, and the stressful reorganizing of bank accounts. But when you are in that critical 10-year window between 65 and 75, a late life separation is fundamentally something else entirely. It is a severe, systemic physical trauma. In the medical community, we look past the psychological drama and focus entirely on the cold biological reality. When a long-term marital bond dissolves during this fragile decade, it inflicts a deep biological cost that attacks your internal vital organs, completely rewrites your hormone production, and actively accelerates your biological clock toward a premature decline. To understand exactly how this destruction happens inside your body, we have to examine the concept of your biological scaffolding. For decades, having a consistent partner acts as a critical external regulatory system for your brain. When that partner disappears, your central nervous system instantly registers a state of high-stakes existential threat. Your body behaves exactly like a house whose foundation has been suddenly ripped away during a major storm. This structural collapse triggers a permanent, toxic hormonal overflow. Your adrenal glands begin pumping out massive amounts of cortisol and adrenaline. In a younger body, this survival mechanism is temporary, but after 65, your cellular repair systems are already running at a lower efficiency. This chronic hormonal flood acts like battery acid dripping continuously onto your delicate cardiovascular lining. This is not a theoretical psychological concept, this is a proven clinical reality. A landmark longitudinal study published by the National Institutes of Health through PubMed investigated these exact mechanisms. The exhaustive research, titled "The Health and Mortality Consequences of Divorce in Later Life," tracked the physiological outcomes of older adults who experienced late-life separation. The clinical evidence was undeniable. The study demonstrated that undergoing a divorce in mature and later life directly causes a massive spike in cardiovascular diseases and inflicts severe damage on your immune system. The data confirmed that the biological shock of this specific event drastically increases your vulnerability to deadly cardiac episodes and leaves your body completely defenseless against chronic illness. Think of your immune system like a highly disciplined military defense network. Throughout your life, it patrols your bloodstream, destroying mutated cells and neutralizing dangerous external infections. But the relentless stress of a late-life split completely blindfolds your immune cells. Your body stops producing vital protective antibodies. At the exact same time, your blood vessels become stiff and inflamed under the constant pressure of elevated cortisol levels. This creates the absolute perfect storm for a sudden, catastrophic medical event. Your blood pressure climbs dangerously, your arterial walls collect plaque at an accelerated rate, and your neurological defense systems simply shut down. In the United States, this biological breakdown is further compounded by a brutal structural reality. When an older American faces a severe health crisis completely alone, the domestic safety net is non-existent. In our current healthcare landscape, managing a sudden cardiovascular emergency requires immediate, highly coordinated intervention. An older individual living isolated in a suburban home has no one to notice the subtle early warnings of a heart attack. There is no one to monitor medications, no one to manage demanding healthcare costs, and no one to provide the vital daily support that prevents a minor injury from turning into a permanent loss of independence. You are forced to navigate a highly complex and unforgiving medical system entirely by yourself. The stress of managing these escalating financial and medical burdens independently feeds right back into that destructive inflammatory cycle, driving your biological age upward at a terrifying velocity. The biological reality is clear. A late-life split does not just change your social status, it actively dismantles your physical durability, leaving your internal systems completely exposed to rapid degradation at the exact moment when you possess the lowest amount of metabolic reserve to fight back. To understand the precise intersection where late-life relationship trauma transforms into physical decline, let me tell you about a patient of mine named Arthur. Arthur was a 67-year-old retired corporate accountant from Chicago, Illinois. For 35 years, Arthur lived a highly structured, analytical life. He was meticulously organized, deeply disciplined, and completely predictable. He spent decades commuting into downtown Chicago, managing large-scale financial portfolios, and coming home to the exact same suburban house where he and his wife raised two successful children. To anyone looking from the outside, Arthur had successfully achieved the concrete American dream. He was sharp, financially secure, and completely ready to step into a peaceful retirement. But shortly after his 65th birthday, the structural scaffolding of Arthur's life quietly evaporated. His long career came to a permanent end. His children relocated across the country to pursue their own independent corporate careers. Arthur and his wife were suddenly forced to confront a silent, empty house 24 hours a day. Without the daily distractions of work and parenting, the hidden emotional fractures that they had completely ignored for 3 decades rapidly expanded into unbridgeable chasms. Within 2 years of stepping down from his accounting firm, Arthur's 30-year marriage completely collapsed. He found himself signing divorce papers, packing up his remaining personal belongings, and moving into a small, isolated bachelor apartment in the quiet outskirts of Chicago. This is where the true biological tragedy began to unfold in my clinic. Arthur believed he was handling the massive life transition relatively well. He told himself that he was an independent American man, that he had a strong financial cushion, and that he could simply manage this new chapter alone. But while his conscious mind was trying to stay composed, his physical body was internally registering a state of absolute survival panic. The sudden and complete removal of his primary relationship companion completely blindfolded his immune systems. Arthur's home environment had transformed overnight from a predictable domestic sanctuary into a silent, stressful vacuum. During his routine clinical visits, the medical data began to paint a terrifying picture of rapid biological acceleration. Arthur's baseline blood pressure, which had been perfectly controlled for over 15 years, suddenly climbed to dangerous, volatile levels. When we analyzed his routine blood work, his system was completely flooded with massive markers of systemic cellular inflammation. He began reporting severe, unyielding exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix, accompanied by a profound mental fog that made it incredibly difficult for him to balance his own basic personal accounts. His physical body was literally eroding under the weight of a constant, toxic hormonal overflow. This rapid physical deterioration is the exact real-world manifestation of the landmark research published by the National Institutes of Health. As the data in that exhaustive study proved, the intense biological shock of undergoing a late-life separation in mature adulthood directly forces a massive, precipitous spike in severe cardiovascular disease and inflicts devastating, long-term damage on the immune system. Because Arthur no longer had a companion sharing his daily routine, his body lost its external regulatory framework. The chronic lifestyle disruption directly translated into an accelerated accumulation of arterial plaque and a total collapse of his cellular defense networks. One evening, the true danger of his new isolated reality almost cost him his life. Arthur experienced a sudden, severe cardiac event inside his quiet apartment. Because he lived entirely alone in a sprawling suburban environment, there was no companion present to recognize the subtle, early warning signs of distress. There was no partner to immediately dial emergency services or coordinate urgent medical intervention. He lay on the floor for several agonizing hours before managing to reach his phone. Arthur survived the physical heart attack, but his overall biological resilience was permanently compromised. The severe lack of an immediate built-in domestic support net turned a treatable cardiovascular event into a devastating loss of functional independence. He left the hospital with a body that was functionally indistinguishable from a man well into his late 80s, serving as a stark, clinical warning that when you destroy a long-term social foundation at 67, your biological survival networks quickly follow suit. Why exactly does a separation inflict such devastating physical damage specifically between the ages of 65 and 75? Why is this compressed 10-year window so uniquely dangerous compared to experiencing a divorce in your 20s, your 40s, or even your late 80s? To understand this clinical urgency, we must examine the intersection of late life, lifestyle disruption, and your body's natural aging trajectory. When you undergo a massive social rupture earlier in life, your body possesses an immense amount of metabolic reserve capacity. Your cardiovascular system is flexible, your cells repair themselves rapidly, and your immune system can easily absorb months of chronic emotional stress without experiencing a fundamental structural collapse. But when you step into the 65 to 75 window, your physiological systems are already standing directly on the edge of a major biological cliff. At this exact stage of the American life cycle, the transition is completely unforgiving. For decades, your physical health was stabilized by a highly predictable domestic environment. But the moment a late life split occurs, that entire protective structure is instantly shattered. Consider the sudden economic and environmental reality of an older American facing a marital split at age 68. This is precisely the moment when couples are forced to execute a complex division of their shared retirement assets, liquidate their long-term property investments, and dismantle their unified 401k plans. The immense stress of this chaotic process occurs at the exact time when your earning potential has permanently ceased. Instead of resting within the stability of a paid-off family home, individuals are suddenly forced to relocate into unfamiliar, smaller living spaces, drastically changing their entire daily routine. This sudden environmental shock delivers a massive, unyielding blow to your systemic biology. This lifestyle volatility triggers an immediate and destructive cellular cascade. As established by independent demographic data, this sudden surge in late-life split velocity among older generations completely removes your primary buffer against biological vulnerability. Your system is forced into a prolonged state of fight or flight, maintaining a continuous overproduction of toxic inflammatory markers. In a younger body, this inflammatory response can be cleared away during normal sleep cycles. But in an aging system, your cellular defense networks are already naturally declining. This continuous inflammatory state acts like an invisible fire burning through your tissues, rapidly advancing your biological age far past your actual chronological years. When you look at the underlying clinical progression, the timing becomes absolutely critical. Between 65 and 75, your body is in a transitional state where external intervention is still highly powerful. If your lifestyle remains stable, your system retains enough cellular plasticity to maintain your independent mobility, protect your cardiovascular strength, and preserve your long-term cognitive health. But if you introduce the massive systemic shock of an environment-shattering divorce during this exact 10-year window, you completely accelerate the natural aging process, pushing your physical durability over the edge before your repair mechanisms can adapt. You are essentially taking a system that requires maximum care and stability and subjecting it to the most volatile social disruption possible. The true tragedy of this specific timing is that it leaves you completely defenseless for the final decades of your lifespan. If a major health crisis strikes when you are 65, a supportive domestic partnership can help nurse you back to a fully independent baseline. But when you dismantle that partnership during this critical decade, you are entering your 70s entirely exposed. By the time you reach age 80, the damage accumulated from a decade of chronic cortisol exposure, unmanaged blood pressure spikes, and profound social isolation has permanently set into your internal organs. Reversing systemic cardiovascular plaque or restoring a profoundly compromised immune system becomes nearly impossible after 80. This creates an absolute state of biological urgency. The window between 65 and 75 is your final opportunity to build and fortify the physical resilience that will carry you through the rest of your life. Every single choice you make regarding your environment, your stress levels, and your social stability during this compressed 10-year period carries massive permanent consequences for your future quality of life. Allowing a late-life social collapse to go unmanaged during this critical decade is not just a personal crisis, it is a direct path to a rapid, irreversible loss of your physical independence. You must recognize that the stakes are incredibly high, and understanding the precise physical timing of this dangerous window is the only way to protect your physical durability before your biological reserve capacity is completely gone. The clinical reality we have dissected today is undeniably heavy. Watching the social and environmental foundations of your mature life dissolve in your late 60s is an incredibly demanding experience, both emotionally and structurally. It forces your system into an unnatural acceleration of biological aging, putting your cardiovascular durability and your immune system under severe, continuous stress. But while this specific 10-year window represents an immense biological minefield, I want you to understand something with absolute certainty. Hard does not mean hopeless. Your physical body, even in the wake of massive lifestyle transitions, retains a remarkable capacity for adaptation and structural stabilization if you provide it with the exact integrated support it requires. You possess a definitive clinical opportunity right now to intervene, rewrite your health trajectory, and construct a highly durable physical framework that can bend without breaking. To counteract the profound biological cost of a late-life social rupture, you must transition immediately from a state of passive emotional survival to a state of highly intentional, structured medical action. Your primary objective must be the deliberate reconstruction of your biological scaffolding. First, you must establish an unyielding, non-negotiable schedule of comprehensive cardiovascular monitoring with a trusted physician. Because late-life relationship trauma directly correlates with acute spikes in arterial inflammation and blood pressure volatility, tracking your metabolic markers, cholesterol balance, and resting heart rates is your absolute first line of medical defense. Do not wait for physical symptoms to manifest before evaluating your internal vital systems. Second, you must aggressively combat the systemic immune degradation caused by chronic stress by executing a total overhaul of your daily nutritional patterns. Shifting your diet toward a highly active, anti-inflammatory Mediterranean framework built heavily around clean fats, lean proteins, and intense micronutrients is a direct molecular intervention. This clean nutritional fueling helps calm the overactive cellular alarm bells that a sudden lifestyle shock triggers, protecting your blood vessels from accelerated plaque accumulation and allowing your tissue repair mechanisms to catch up. Third, and perhaps most critically within the context of the American lifestyle, you must replace your lost domestic partner network with an intentional, highly active social convoy. Do not allow the silence of an empty apartment to dictate your cognitive and physical output. Seek out structured community learning systems, register for local expert-led educational courses, or join structured civic volunteer groups operating within your municipality. Engaging your brain in complex, frustrating new tasks alongside other individuals forces your neural pathways to remain active, directly suppressing the onset of deep depressive symptoms and cognitive decline. Pair this intellectual accountability with progressive resistance exercise to preserve your fundamental physical autonomy. By combining clinical vigilance, anti-inflammatory nutrition, and structured social integration, you are actively giving your body the integrated prescription it requires to build deep biological resilience. If the evidence-based breakdowns we explored today have fundamentally changed how you view the connection between your relationship environment and your physical survival, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like right now. Every single week, I deliver practical, evidence-grounded Y-COA guidance designed exclusively for adults navigating the critical 60 to 80 age range. This demographic deserves highly accurate, sophisticated health data delivered with genuine professional respect. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an essential medical upload, and let us commit to protecting your biological durability together. Now, before you leave this video today, I want to hear directly from you. I want you to take a moment, step down into the comment section below, and answer this one direct question. What is the single most important lifestyle change or social connection you are going to implement first after watching this breakdown? Tell me your current age, tell me your specific commitment, and I promise you that I read every single comment personally. Let us keep communicating, let us keep building, and I will see you in the next clinical video.